bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons here with the HockeyWriters.com. As always, Colton Pankiw's with us. Colton, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Jim. It's an exciting game tonight. Like we just said before, pretty scrappy. So good one to kind of come out of the break too.
Yes. Yeah, we're recording this right after the game. I was all ducked out and ready to go watch game, and I was a little worried there at the end of the second period when Detroit scored right after. I think it was right after a failed power play, and then it was 3-2, but it ended up being 5-2. Evander Kane gets one. Brobergs get a couple points on that one. Lots of good stuff, and they were very, very physical tonight. No actual fights, like there was no like dropping the glove sort of thing, but there was a lot of scrums and stuff. Even Louis DeBrusque was in the thing. He's like, somebody seriously dropped the gloves already. We need this to end so that somebody can just sort of settle it. But you're right. Big game coming out of the All-Star break where the Oilers are extremely hot now. I think they're 11-3-1 or 11-3-2 in their last few games. How important is it that the Oilers get right back off to where they ended things before the break? Like winning a game here is super important if they want to take a run here, right?
Yeah, it's huge because I mean we kind of talked about it that the All-Star break almost came at a unfortunate time for them because they were really starting to get hot, and obviously coming out of the break and getting off to that good start, I think kind of helps rebuild that confidence again. So it's a really good start to come out. And honestly, the thing that I liked about it was I don't think they necessarily played their best game. Like some of their biggest guys didn't do a whole lot, and the fact that they were able to get the depth scoring and everything and still find a way to win says a lot. So yeah, just excited for the next little stretch here.
Yeah, who were you most impressed by? Like, there was not a lot until the end there, where I think Nugent Hopkins scored on the power play. The Oilers were, 1 for 4, 1 for 5? Like, they didn't really have much going on the power play. And in fact, it didn't look very good. It was kind of disjointed and stuff. And that could be part of the time off and not having the opportunity to sort of work on it for a little while and stuff. But Warren Foegele got 2. I thought he was going for the hat trick. He might have been maybe the best Oiler on the ice tonight. I thought he was really strong, and he looks like he might be figuring things out and coming on strong here at the right time for the Oilers, which will be extremely important for them if they're going to get some depth scoring. Ryan McLeod got one. Who did you like? Was there somebody stood out for you?
Well, you said it with Foegele. I mean, obviously had the 2 goals, and like you said, I think he's been quite good the last month or so. I was kind of surprised when he came out of the lineup there against Chicago right before the break, but I think he's been really solid again tonight. Obviously had those 2 goals, but made a lot of other good plays too. Was really close to getting the hat trick, kind of just whiffed on that one right in front. But other than that, I thought Campbell again looked really good, which is obviously huge. If they can kind of get him continuing kind of what he was doing right before the break, and now again, as long as Skinner's still able to kind of get his reps, having that 1-2 goalie punch as they go down the final stretch of the season is huge. So I guess Campbell made a big breakaway save with not much time left too, actually. So I thought he was really good.
Yeah, no, he was good. Like, I don't think there was anything really that was his fault. Like the first goal, there was no chance he was possibly saving that one. Coming across, Bertuzzi got that one. It was a nice goal. I don't think it was Campbell played great. I thought he was really strong. In fact, I was a little surprised he got the start. I'm not sure why. I would have figured Stuart Skinner would get the go ahead, but no, Campbell played well. And what's he got, like 8 or 9 in a row now? So that's a really good sign for them. Speaking of people who weren't in the lineup, though, when you mentioned Warren Foegele got pulled, no Puljujarvi tonight. So do you think that has anything to do with just the depth that the Oilers have, or is this potential pulling him out because there might be a trade coming around the corner here? Like, why no Puljujarvi, do you think?
I honestly think it just comes down to more of there's not really a spot in the lineup for him right now. Like all these other guys are kind of just gelling at the right time, playing so well. And I don't think and you hear Wardcroft say too, like it's not necessarily anything he's doing wrong. Like he's not really making any mistakes. He's continuing to play good defensively. Obviously that scoring touch that we talked about just hasn't been there this season, but I think it's just kind of other guys meshing, and just that you kind of have those guys in the bottom 6 that know that kind of role a bit better than him. And he just really doesn't have a spot on this team. So I don't think it's so much trade related, because we've seen him come out once before the break too. But like you said, there had been a lot of rumors right now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see something happen in the near future. But having said that, he very well could be back in the lineup in just a few games from now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was Janmark or something that wasn't skating either today or yesterday, something like that. And that could have been why, because Janmark sort of slotted back in tonight, a little bit of a surprise, I guess. And so Puljujarvi comes out. But okay, so if it's not trade related, let me ask you this. If Puljujarvi's not in the lineup and there's no Yamamoto yet, right? He's not back until February 12th at the earliest because of the LTI. If you're leaving Puljujarvi out voluntarily because you have a lot of depth there, how more likely is it that he's the guy who does move here? Like whether this pull was trade related or not, which you're probably right at this point, it probably isn't. There's still whatever there is 24 days before the deadline. Are we looking at a player who probably just doesn't fit here anymore, who I wouldn't want to say expendable, but kind of is? Like if you're looking to upgrade your lineup or you're looking to move money, if he's not in the lineup anyway, he's the guy that you're probably moving. Is that what we're kind of witnessing here?
Yeah, to me, I think that the only way he doesn't leave if he's an Oiler after the deadline is if either they couldn't make any moves or if they did make some and traded another guy. I think it comes down to the fact that they weren't able to move him. Like we've said before, I don't think he has a ton of value right now. Like we were even kind of questioning if he were to have been the guy that got put on waivers a few weeks ago, whether or not he'd get claimed. Like we really don't know kind of what other teams around the league are thinking with him right now. So I do expect them to make a move at the deadline, and obviously they'd have to move money out in order to make that happen. And I think he is the guy that they would at least try their best to move first before anyone else.
Okay, well let's switch gears here a little bit, and then we'll talk about some moves that are on the table. And we should probably talk about the one that everybody seems to be talking about this week. So I think it was Bob Stauffer first said on Oilers Now something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing here, 3 months ago I wouldn't have even considered Jakob Chychrun. 2 months ago it was a maybe. Now all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, if you're going to go for it, you might as well get something good. Now the something good is a random, strange thing to say, because why would you make a trade for somebody who's not very good? But he's hinting here that maybe the Oilers are circling back on this. And then it was TSN's Ryan Rashog who said, I don't know if it was the podcast or on TSN or something like that, that he's now all of a sudden going, well, maybe they do go for this. Now, we had heard that Jakob Chychrun was probably out of the realm of possibility just simply because of the asking price that Arizona wanted for him. And I don't think that's changed. I'm not sure the Coyotes have really flinched here, but they want a first rounder, possibly another first rounder or a first round equivalent pick. They want a prospect. They're obviously willing to take some money back. They're going to have to do that with almost any team that they're talking to here, especially if they want that second first rounder. So are we looking at something where maybe Puljujarvi gets thrown in there? Is that a play that you think at this point? I know you've always been kind of like, I think Chychrun might be somebody you want to go after. I think if I'm not mistaken, you've always sort of been in pro, let's do this Chychrun deal. Are we looking at this maybe now? Like, is this a Oilers situation where, yeah, maybe it wasn't, now it is? Like, what are the odds? Give it a number.
The odds. I mean, so the way I look at it is, a few months ago, all the media guys who obviously kind of have some intel, they hear what's going on around there and they're saying it's not a good fit, it's not going to happen kind of thing. And now all of a sudden it's completely changed the tune. So I think obviously there is a lot more kind of happening on that, to the point that I do think that they have a pretty good shot at landing them. Obviously there are other teams, but I mean, number wise, that's tough. It was funny because the last week was finally kind of the week that I'd sit on here, like maybe not, like asking prices high kind of thing. And now that it's being talked so much again, you kind of can't help but get excited for it. It's kind of the biggest guy that's been around all season long that you've heard things about. So I think if they are able to go out and land him, like it's a risk, of course, the health, like the just, you don't know what, if Broberg's the guy, you don't know what that could end up being in a few years. But I think regardless of kind of what happens, if this trade were to occur, you'd have to give Ken Holland some props just for kind of trying it to really give his team the edge, because the Western Conference, I think, with obviously Colorado's been better lately and that's still the team to beat in it, but I think it's pretty wide open for the taking this year. I really don't think after Colorado there's any teams that you could say undoubtedly are stronger than the Oilers. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to go for this year.
Okay, well, let's play devil's advocate then. So let's say I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the Oilers have been extremely hot. They might be the hottest team in the NHL right now. And we would say this about the Boston Bruins when they're still on top, but when they were like, couldn't lose a game, and they definitely didn't lose 2 in a row. They were talking about what do they add at the deadline, and everybody's like, kind of like, well, don't disrupt team chemistry, don't slot somebody in there that's going to all of a sudden mess things up. They're not talking about that anymore because Boston has sort of come back down to earth a little bit. Like they've lost a couple games here and there, so they're not like unfallible. But the Oilers are hot. What happens if in the next week or two, and they're playing a pretty light schedule. Like they get Detroit again in 8 days. They got some teams that they should be beating on paper here. What if the Oilers continue to roll? Like, what if they win 4, 5, 6 in a row here, and all of a sudden they're like, do you really want to add anybody at this point? Like, obviously they're going to have to remove somebody from the lineup for Yamamoto to get in here, but do you want to make a major deal if you're the hottest team in the NHL, if you're just rolling along and everybody's feeling good about their game and you've got team chemistry and you're doing all these things right? Defense is good. They're keeping teams to 2 goals or less. Like, everything's clicking. So do you want to add another piece, or do you add because you're rewarding people for playing so well? What would your opinion if you were the GM here?
So I think just based off what you've seen in the playoffs last year, especially when it got to that Colorado series, and not that that was just a defense issue, obviously goaltending, even the forwards weren't good enough, but I think once they really played that top elite team, their back end did get exposed. And I just think no matter how good they're playing, and like you said, it's a soft schedule too, so that you have to keep that in mind, that even if they do kind of roll over these next few weeks here, like they're not playing the really top teams that they're going to have to beat out in the playoffs at some point. And to me, I still think that blue line really needs another piece to kind of be good enough to be able to just keep them afloat whenever they're not having McDavid, Draisaitl going out dominating like they did last year. So to me, I think if the move's there, I would be interested in them taking it. I can completely see why people would be hesitant, especially how good Broberg's looked in the 2 first-round picks. Like, it's a steep price, and obviously there's a reason that Arizona's been so patient. They think that at some point some team is going to pay it, and the way I look at it is, if the Oilers don't, I think someone else will. So I say take the chance. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. Like, what do you think about it? A bit more hesitant?
I mean, I do like the idea of going for it. There's a couple things that would scare me off. Like, if Arizona's looking for a first, which I would give, like if it's just this year's first round pick, I know it's a deep draft, but the Oilers are going to be picking somewhere probably between 25 and 32. So it's not like it's like they say up to the top 20 is really, you're going to get an impact player there potentially. Outside of that, you're probably not. I would suggest, and this is being very whatever, but if the Oilers finish somewhere in the top 20 in the lottery, it's not a good year for them. Like, I think they believe they are much better than a bottom or a top 12 team. So I would say give the first up all day long if that's what it takes you to get Chychrun. It's the second first that kind of is like, do you want to give a second first in like 2024 if that's what they're looking for? Like, absolutely 2 first-round picks, or can you give a guy like Puljujarvi, who was a former first-round pick, who was a 4th overall selection? Does Arizona look at that and they go, okay, well, there's our 2 firsts. What other prospect can you throw in here? Then it depends. But I would be a little leery if you're thinking this year's first, next year's first, and then you got to give up like another prospect like a Broberg or whatever. Like, I don't know. That's beyond steep. That's like really high for a guy who I think is very good and at his value. Like, if Arizona retains and you get him at like $3.5 million or something, even better. But geez, I don't know. I like Chychrun. I like the idea of Chychrun. I'm not concerned that he's more offensive than he is a defensive defenseman, because the way that Desharnais is playing and the way that some of these guys have really stepped up, especially if you keep Broberg, I think he's playing really well. It's the 2 firsts and a guy like Broberg. If you have to give that up to get Chychrun, I'm not sure I would do it. Like, it's a steep price. Like, that's a lot to be asking for a guy who, I don't know. Does he do it for you? Is he that piece? Is he the thing that gets Edmonton from we're in the top 4 again to we could legitimately win the Stanley Cup? Like, I don't know. I don't know Chychrun well enough to know, and I haven't watched him inside and out well enough to know that he is that guy. So depends on the ask. Like, if Arizona's willing to come down, like if teams just bow out and the Oilers can do a first, Puljujarvi, and a prospect, yeah, I do it. But if it's 2 firsts and Broberg, I don't know that I would. So it'll be very interesting. If it isn't Chychrun though, so say the price stays where it is and it's way too high, who do you think would be next on their list? Do you think they just go strictly rental and go, let's get cheap? Let's do a Luke Shen type of thing. Let's do, somebody whose contract is expiring that isn't going to cost a 1st-round pick to do it, and just add a little depth and just run with a Broberg, a Desharnais, a Kulak, and see what else you can add in case of an injury? Or what would you do?
So if that were the case, like if they decided not to go for Chychrun or someone else landed him, I think a smaller move, like going for Luke Shen, a guy that wouldn't cost you as much, is kind of my more preferred thing, a guy that can come in and out of the lineup. But I think based off what you're hearing, I think that they would circle back to Gavrikov first, especially if the Leafs were to add Chychrun. Like, it sounds like they're kind of in on him too. And those Oilers and Leafs are kind of the two teams you hear that are really circling on Gavrikov. So I'd be curious if they came back to that first. Obviously, I think he is a better defenseman than Schenn, but I think just for the asking price again for a guy, like, that's what I've always liked about Chychrun, right? Is you have him at the 2 extra years at a good price point still, where Gavrikov set to become a free agent, can go wherever, or if not, is going to take a raise, and obviously just isn't the same level of player as Chychrun. So in a perfect world, I'd say if they're out on him, just a smaller ad like a Schenn, but I think Gavrikov, if that's the case, would end up being their guy.
Yeah. What about the cost for him though? Because what we're hearing, I don't know if it's changed or whatever, but that's a first too, like all day long. So they always got to give up a first round. And then all of a sudden you're talking about a first round pick for a rental who is probably going to go. Like, he probably won't stick around. So I know others won't be able to sign him anyway. So would you prefer that to somebody like a Jake McCabe out of Chicago, who also has some time left on his deal and probably won't cost you a first round pick to get that done? Maybe a second, maybe the second and a combination of something. Obviously, Chicago's going to take some money back because he's got some money on his contract still. What would your preference be? Go the rental, pay the extra price, or get somebody who doesn't cost so much, who's got a little term left, and then figure it out?
Well, that's kind of what we were saying last week. Like, when I'd asked you about McCabe, is I don't know a ton about his game. I didn't even realize how much money he was making until you brought it up on the last show. But I'd never considered the fact, obviously, the Blackhawks likely in that deal would have to retain dollars. So then that's something worth exploring. I think it's just, again, like, I just can't get over like the excitement, I guess, of being able to be the team that kind of adds that big guy at the deadline. Like, I can't remember the last time the Oilers have really been in that position to go out and land that really big fish that's out on the market. So I think it would just be so exciting for the fan base. And I think it would do a lot for the guys in the room too. Obviously, there's the chemistry like you spoke about, but I think just McDavid, Draisaitl, those guys that are wanting to win so bad, have been there for so long now, seeing that their GM's willing to go out and make that huge move for them, especially with the price he's paying, just showing the group overall he believes in them and thinks they have what it takes. I think that would go a long ways in the room and pay off from more than just adding a player of Chychrun. I think it would really kind of give the guys a lot of energy down the stretch and into the playoffs as well.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for like rewarding your team and saying, okay, you guys have earned this. You've played up to the point where I pushed all of our chips in and we're going for it. This is the year we're going to do it. Evander Kane might have been that guy last year, but they added him so early. He didn't feel like a trade deadline addition, but really he was, right? Like, he came in and he wound up being so good that he was probably the best player that the Oilers could have added. So you're right, though. It didn't really feel like it because it wasn't like a deadline deal, but it did do that.
There was all like I don't know if controversy is the right word, but there was a lot of doubts on that. Like, there wasn't so much excitement. There was a lot of people some people flat out hated it, some liked it, but then we're kind of just waiting to see how it worked out. And like you said, obviously now we realize how great it's been. But yeah, at the time it just didn't have quite the same excitement around it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. I think they're playing really well. Would you run with Campbell again as they head into now Philadelphia and Ottawa on Thursday and Saturday? Would you keep giving Campbell the runs? He's been pretty hot. Or would you go to Stuart Skinner and make sure that he still gets his reps in? Who would you pick here in the next game?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I think if I was picking, I might go with Skinner, just because I really like the kind of, I don't know, 50-50, but kind of splitting your two goalies, making sure they're both sharp. But with that said, I think with how well Campbell's played lately, Woodcroft, I kind of expect him to be in just to be rewarded for this. Obviously, he had that really tough stretch for the first few months of the season. So I think kind of just showing that confidence in him again to let him know that he is your guy. I think I can see both sides of it. Personally, I'd probably go Skinner for the next one just to kind of keep both sharp. But I think that once we do see that game, I expect probably that Campbell will be the guy in that.
Yeah, well, they go Philadelphia on Thursday, Ottawa Saturday, and then Montreal on Sunday. So there is a back-to-back there when we know for sure one of those guys is going to get in there. But yeah, to me, like, I really like Campbell's game. I think he's played really well. What I don't want to see happen is all of a sudden he's on this really, really, really big high, and then he has not a great game. And then, because he seems to be the kind of guy who his confidence can be shaken pretty easily.
He's freaky, yeah.
Yeah. So if you can get Skinner in there and he has a good game, great. Go back to Campbell, go to Skinner on the Sunday. Just keep rotating your guys, make everybody feel good about the way that they're playing, that they're both hot. Because I think both guys, if they know each other's really playing well, then they can sort of relax and not have to be too worried about it for sure. Let's make a prediction here. So they got Philadelphia on Thursday. a team that is very, very much up in the air as to what they're going to be doing. We're hearing tons of talk about, Van Riemsdyk, Kevin Hayes, whomever else on that team could potentially be moved. What do you think is going to happen in this game? Do the Oilers keep rolling here?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it's hard to say not, especially again tonight. Like Draisaitl and McDavid were pretty quiet, so I think you don't see that happen too many games in a row here. So I expect them to kind of maybe pick things up a bit next game in terms of offensive output. So yeah, I definitely am confident with the Oilers again rolling into that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 4-1. That's gonna be my prediction for the game. I think the last time I made that kind of prediction, I was way off with the score. And in fact, it didn't go well at all. So we probably shouldn't be doing this. But yeah, I'm gonna go 4-1 Edmonton over Philadelphia. Do you have a score prediction?
Yeah, I'll say again because I think those two top guys will kind of play a bit better. So I'll say 5-2 Oilers.
Right on. What are we thinking for Connor McDavid? Slow game today. He played well. I thought he had really some good opportunities. Power play didn't click until the very last one. Usually he rebounds when he doesn't have the best game in the world and he doesn't really get on the score sheet a whole bunch. All of a sudden he seems to explode. So, and having said that, playing Philadelphia, Connor McDavid being motivated, what are you thinking for him for the next game? How on fire is Connor McDavid going to be?
Well, and it's funny because we talk about kind of how I was saying that he was a bit quieter tonight, but then he had that one play in the third that if that goes in, that's all that's being showed on Sportsnet all night.
That
right?
was unreal. He thought he scored too. Like he thought he snuck it 5-hole for sure.
Yeah, no, he was frustrated after. But yeah, I think he's just so dominant. And I think obviously he'll never say it, but I think he really wants to hit that 60 goal mark this season. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him pot a couple next game, maybe an assist. So I'll say 2 goals, 3 points next game.
Yeah, no, I think he has a big game too. And Draisaitl was kind of quiet tonight. I thought he was not bad, but a little off. Like really doesn't. We didn't see much of Hyman. Like Hyman's usually pretty whatever.
I didn't really notice him much at all.
No, not really at all. Evander Kane, I get this feeling like he's itching. Like he did score the empty netter, but I think he needs to punch somebody. Like, I don't know exactly what is going on, but I think he's annoyed that he's been sitting out this whole time, that he hasn't really been able to get super physical. You saw that tonight. He really got in there and he was scrappy. And did you notice the Tyler Bertuzzi cross check? So Kane gets tripped. Bertuzzi comes in, cross checks him. Like, I'm not sure if it was in the face, but right around the head area, skates away. No wonder Evander Kane's so mad. And then he's like fighting everybody. He's like in the scrum. And then Bertuzzi comes back in and tackles him again. How long before Kane breaks out here and just pummels on somebody? Like, what are we expecting here? The over under on how many games before Kane loses his mind?
Well, it's funny because right before we did this, I was just scrolling through Twitter and I think it was just a fan who tweeted something about, I guess the Oilers gave Kane permission to fight again. And Jason Gregor, I think it was, had quote tweeted him and said, that's actually not the case. They talked to Kane and he's been told not to, but said it might be kind of hard to keep himself from doing that. And you've seen that tonight. It's just kind of the passion. It's hard to get guys like that to not do that. This is kind of how they're wired. It's almost like for a guy like Kane, kind of how he gets going. If he really kind of, the physicality starts up early, it seems to really kind of wake him up and get him going. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's the very next game. It's kind of game by game situation, obviously, but I think he's shown even that one against Tampa, like he seems to be like he's fully back and invested in the games, and just I think one thing sets him off, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him fight right away here.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be right away. I think he needs it to release. Like you can just see it building up in him. I will say this though, I am very pleasantly surprised, maybe not surprised so much, but I'm just pleased with the fact that Klim Kostin, Vincent Desharnais, Brett Kulak laid in like 5 or 6 hits tonight, and he was ready to go. There's a lot more physicality on this team. Like they are stepping up. They're all willing to drop them. Everybody seems happy enough to get in it. Would you add another piece if you're looking at the trade deadline and the Oilers are tough for money, and money in, money out is probably where they're at this point? Would you add another physical presence, or do you think the Oilers finally have it? Like, are they a team now that's gritty enough, dirty enough, willing to, get in those dust up type of games like we saw tonight, where they don't necessarily need to add another part of that?
Yeah, I don't think they need it. I think like it's been so many years that we've kind of said, especially the early McDavid days, even before that, they were always a team that just got pushed around too much. They didn't really have that physical guy. And then the odd time they did have the guy that could drop the gloves, there's a guy that they couldn't really rely on to put on the ice very often. He'd spend some time in the press box. And I think kind of just having a few of those guys, like the addition of Costin's been huge. Like he's a guy that's a clear regular in their lineup now. He brings so much, and not just the toughness. Like, he's got some goal scoring ability too. The guys seem to really love him on the team, and just having that kind of reassurance, I guess, that if someone does take a run at you, you got, like you said, Kane, Costin, Desharnais, Nurse. Like, there's all sorts of guys. There's really not too many teams in the league, I think, right now that would have a lot of guys that are any tougher than them. Like, they have some guys that can really throw and step up, be physical, and just big presences too, that other teams are kind of looking over their shoulders. So with the limited cap space they have, I just don't think it's necessary. I think that they could address some of their needs, especially on the back end, probably. So I just don't see adding specifically toughness as something that's really at the top of the priority list right now.
We talk about Evander Kane getting ready to drop one. I kind of want to see what Vincent Desharnais can do.
Yeah.
Like, he's so big and he's so strong. Did you notice tonight he had those two guys? He was like WWE, where he's like the Hogan. He's going to take their heads and ram them together. Like, he was holding one guy off with each arm. Like, he's so big. Like, I'm just really kind of curious to see. I've not watched him in the AHL or anywhere else to see like what happens when he throws down and if he's really ever had to do it. But I'm really kind of curious to see what happens. Like, is he as tough as he looks like he probably is, or is he just kind of like a big dude who's not afraid to get in there, but probably isn't going to drop the mitts very often? Like, is he a Chara? Is it Chara tough? Like, is that? I'm really curious. And it looked like he was ready to go tonight. Like, everybody was talking to the Red Wings, like, just test me. Come on, let's go. Let's see how far you're willing to push us. And it never happened. But we're talking about Philly, the team notoriously known for this sort of stuff. Should be very interesting to see. But if you have to pick somebody who fights first, we'll end it on this one. Who are you picking? So there's Kane, there's Nurse, there's Costin, there's Desharnais. Kulak's been going. Like, who drops first here?
I'll say Costin. I just think like he's a guy that really just seems to be willing to do anything to get the team going. So maybe if it's a slow start, or it could just be a guy simply coming up and giving McDavid a little shove after the whistle, like nothing crazy at all. But he seems like he really wants to get out there and do that. Like, he really just likes I guess, just kind of rallying the guys around him and just making a good impression on the coaching staff, which he's done plenty of. And I think he really knows like that he is already kind of a fan favorite in Edmonton, or really getting up to that level. So I think he's embraced that. And I would say that he's probably the next guy to go.
I think you're probably right. And I'll say this too, because he hasn't scored in a bit, like, he was really on fire there for a while and producing goals way beyond what anybody ever expected, but he's sort of come back down to earth in that regard. He's still dangerous. He's still good. He's still playing well, but he's doing those things because he's not scoring. So I think if he continues to not score, he's probably going to be like, well, I got to do something, right? He's that player that understands when you're not producing on the scoreboard, you got to do something else to be an effective player. You don't want to miss your opportunity to be in the lineup. You don't want to lose the spot that you have. So you got to do something else. And so if he's not scoring, if he scores, I don't think he's going to drop him. But if he doesn't, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he says, I got to get myself going too, not just his own team. He's got to get himself going, and maybe a good fight will do that. So we'll see. We've seen a lot of scraps lately. Calgary and New York Rangers had a bunch of stuff the other night. And it's starting to get a little antsy. I think people are starting to realize they're out of the All-Star break now. Games matter a lot more. The push is on. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Thank you. Appreciate talking about it. We haven't done one of these right after a game before, so it was kind of nice to be able to dissect a game right after having watched it. But we appreciate you doing this. We appreciate everybody watching. For those of you that check out all the other videos, do so on the YouTube channel for the Hockey Writers. Check out thehockeywriters.com. We have tons of content on there right now. We're talking all things trade deadline for like the next 3 weeks here. So check out all the articles there. Until next time, we'll talk to you on another one. This is THW Oilers Overtime. Take care, everybody.